Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, and this is Maintaining Frame number 135, Women's Ways of Knowing Our Superior, where we are going to be
Mm.
looking at an article and a video from Quillette, which is basically just a month ago starting to discover something that at least I've been bleeding about for years and years now, which is that academia is becoming more and more feminized. And that is going to have an impact on women as well as men. And yeah, that's
Well,
basically what we're doing. So, what?
women who liked academia the way it was, or, with all of those masculine virtues like merit and logic and sharing research and not becoming like a little fortified island onto yourself, that kind of thing. Now we're all in our feminine era when it comes to scholarship. We haven't been for 60 years. I mean, I guess Teal Deer would say that we've been in our feminine
We're
era of scholarship for decades now. So this is maybe just signing off on it,
mm-hmm.
being honest about it, overt about it, saying it's actually, why don't you tell us, did the people who wrote this, was this intended to be laudatory? Were they saying, wow, this is a good thing? Or no? Okay, good.
No, Quillette, I don't want to speak to whatever their politics are, but Quillette is
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily a feminist rag. It's not The Guardian. It's not Slate. It's not,
It can go either
the New
way.
York Times. Yeah, I mean they're kind of they're pretty moderate. I would say they're more of like a centrist thing. That's primarily, some really good people have come out of writing for them. So I tend to give them the benefit of the doubt more often than not. But what this appears to be is an attempt to basically break down the data,
Mm.
with the sort of consequences of including women in higher education as a great achievement. So like how is it changing things? And I think
Mm.
that they're not so much to put an ought on this so much as it is. They're just saying this is like what has
This
happened.
is what has happened. We'll
Yeah.
let the conclusions. We'll leave the conclusions for the viewers. Is it?
Yeah, it's like that. So I wouldn't pretend to put words in their mouth. I don't think they're trying to conclude anything. In fact, the data being what it is, I think suggests something that they might be afraid to talk about, or at least not without confirming the data. But anyway, so there's an article and there's a video. They are not word for word the same, but they basically say the same things. They're basically communicating the same information. So um I guess that you can decide. Do you want to read through the video or read through the see that's
Read
completely
through the
wrong.
video or look through
Or
the
or yeah, or
video, the article.
our article, the video. No, read the article or watch the video is what I meant to say.
Okay, let's. You know what? You did look through the video. Maybe
I did.
yeah. Let's look at the time codes that you found most revealing.
All right. So okay, we'll look at the video. This is from Quillette, and we'll let her do the intro first. But before we do that, do you want to do some things?
Oh yeah, I'll thing the things. All right. So if you would like to send us a message, you can do so, or send us a tip. And if you'd like to add a message to that tip, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And we will read it on the show. Get those tips, get those messages in quick if you want to do that, because there seems to be a bit of a lag. But anyway, feedthebadger.com/justthetip. The very best way for you to tip us, and the very best way for you to send a message if you so desire, because you don't have to send it through YouTube's comment embezzlement system. Okay, I don't know what I'm saying there. Just comment enhancement system. All right. And if you would like to support the show to make sure we can continue to give you this content, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/support. That's feedthebadger.com/support. I'll check periodically to see if we have any thank yous to give. And also, you might see a small amount of cat over here. Mia has returned to the Badger Cave. So if you guys were missing her, she is back. And she is also vociferous. We're just putting her in because she's having a problem. She's got a bit of health issues. She's was very anemic. Hopefully she's out of the woods now, but we want to keep her somewhere where we can monitor her and make sure she's not being harassed by the boys. We got two male cats who like to make her life difficult. So, and we want to give her plenty of time to be able to heal and focus on that. So she's here, and she is behind me right now, looking at me like a little partridge, a little gremlin. So anyway, if you see a flash of smoky black, that's the cat doing her thing behind me. All right, so feedthebadger.com/justthetip to send us a message. You could say hi to Mia, and feedthebadger.com/support to make sure we can continue to bring you this delectable content that discusses things from a completely different angle from everyone else. All right, and speaking of discussion, let's get into it.
All right, I'm going to play the video. We're going to get through the introduction so to set everything up. So
psychologists and other social scientists have been studying human sex differences for 100 years, and in recent decades have demonstrated that many of the differences that emerge in Western cultures are found in every other culture in which they have been studied. That's a quote by David Geary. We are in the middle of a great social experiment. The sex ratios of many important institutions in the West are changing, and few institutions more dramatically illustrate this shift than academia. For centuries, academia was primarily a male-led institution. Although many universities in the United States began admitting women in the 1800s, others did not begin until the mid to late 1900s. Only in the past few decades have women started to outpace men at all levels. New graduate degrees, new faculty members. Today, an institution once led and populated almost entirely by men is increasingly led and populated by women. Because men and women, on average, have different traits, tendencies, and priorities, this change in sex ratios has changed and will continue to change the nature of the modern university.
All right, so that's sort of like setting it up. She's going to get into some data points about this phenomenon. And that's kind of what the article does too, except that it's sort of, I think it might, the article may even have some graphs we can look at. No, but it does have some statistics. So that's the setup. Let me see. I'll jump to the impact of evolving sex ratios. Unless you want to hear more of this part. This is statistics on doctoral degrees by gender. I don't know if that interests you or whatever. I mean, we know that.
Sure, let's look. I mean, if you,
we can. It's like 2 minutes long, so it's not too bad. I got a super chat from Gary Thomas. Thank you, Gary. He says, I listened to a podcast with an evolutionary psychologist who said that when academia is dominated by either gender, XY dominated search for the truth, XX dominated search for helping humanity as a whole. Well, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I really I have a skepticism when they say that when academia is dominated by XY, it becomes dominated by a attempt to like benefit humanity as a whole. And the reason why I say that is because XX
women.
The reason why I say when academia is dominated by women, it doesn't become a attempt to benefit humanity as a whole is because men are a part of humanity. And let's face it, they're not benefiting men at all. They don't, like, we talk about how men need to be helped in various aspects across the board, like the whole spectrum, from sexual assault to domestic violence to false accusations to the dating sphere to education. We talk about everywhere that men need assistance or could be seen as needing assistance, even if that assistance is, hey, we're going to help you get yourself out of this situation, right? Doesn't have to be the kind of assistance that we necessarily give women and children, but whatever it is that men need, we look at that. We look at all of these issues. We're not part of academia. I mean, we literally do academic work in terms of organizing stuff, in terms of creating arguments, and all of that is, and we're not part of academia at all, because we talk about the issue for men, and academia is dominated by dogma around seeing society as being of benefit for men, that men in power equals men benefited. And we are the counter argument to that, and we're completely frozen out. And in fact, everybody who's even neutral on these issues does not dominate. So where is this advocacy for the benefit of humanity? I mean, if you include men in the term humanity, yeah, that's not where we're going towards at all. As I've said repeatedly, you can turn any leftist or any person who says they're on the left or liberal or progressive, you can turn them instantaneously into their caricature of a conservative by simply saying, what about men? Instantaneously, they start talking about bootstrapping and, well, what did he do to cause his circumstance? And we can't help people. What happens if we help people? We'll turn them into thinking that they're victims, and we can't help men. I mean, we can't. That's victimizing men. You're just encouraging them to see themselves as victim. They turn into their caricature of conservative instantaneously. So I have a doubt when you talk about women colonizing academia leading to them focusing on helping humanity, because the only way you can come to that conclusion is if you believe that men aren't part of humanity. Okay, that's that would be my final statement. Go ahead, Brian. I know I sort of jumped all over.
No, it's all right. All I was going to say is that my problem with that statement that men are searching for the truth and women are searching for helping humanity as a whole is that you can't help people if you don't have the truth. So you need the truth what's the point in looking for something that makes you feel good when it's not true? This is how you get kids transitioning. That's how you get that, because you're not actually looking at what the problems are to address them. And you need the truth to do that. That's how you get people dying of heart attacks, for taking a certain medication because they were told they had to, regardless of the side effects, right?
It's for the greater good, Brian.
You need
for
truth.
The greater good.
You cannot do truth without good. These things are not mutually exclusive. You need them together. That's all. All right. Anyway, but that's not what this woman's saying. I'm just responding to that super chat. So let's okay, so she's going to go into the statistics around doctoral degrees by gender.
Evidence for the changing sex composition of academia. In 1970, women received less than 10% of doctoral degrees awarded in the United States. This percentage has steadily increased, reaching parity with men around 2005. Today, the majority of new doctorates are earned by women. Similar patterns pertain elsewhere, including in Australia and many European countries. In 1987, less than a third of faculty at post-secondary institutions in the United States were women. Today, 50.7% are. In the coming years and decades, this percentage is likely to grow. One way to predict future trends, albeit imperfectly, is to look at the percentage of men and women at different career stages. Older cohorts retire and are replaced by new ones. As of 2020, men made up about 63% of full professors, about 52% of associate professors, and about 45% of assistant professors. Among scholars employed at universities and four-year colleges in 2019 in science and engineering disciplines, faculty with 30 years of experience or more were about 25% female, and faculty with less than 10 years of experience were about 42% female. Across biological and life science.
All right, I'm just pausing there for the banana. Okay, so women's participation in academia is growing. We knew this. We talked about this, not just as students, but obviously as a result of prior generations being students, they are also becoming teachers and faculty and professors and such as well. So when there are more women going into college, there are more women going into teaching. Maybe not, obviously it's not one-to-one, but that's where that is. And more women are going for PhDs. I mean, there's not that's just what's happening. I have my opinions on what that means and
Well,
Like what? Because I don't think this woman is saying, "Oh, this is such great news." She's not really saying that this is good or bad. She's just saying this is what's happening. And I know that
mm,
it's sort of like being positioned as, as focusing on women, but I think that's the number that's growing, and that's why they're looking at it.
mm.
Um, and for that's what I think. But yeah, what were you gonna say?
Well, a bunch of things. One, when, and this is something that I've heard from multiple sources now. I was reading a book called Masculinities, I think, and it's around it covers how different cultures approach masculinity around the world and the kind of rituals they use to, you know, initiate boys into manhood and that kind of stuff and how they view it. And it's almost universally that manhood is viewed as this big man concept, which is this generous, protective figure that provides. It's almost like a badass Santa Claus kind of idea, and that's almost universal around the world. That is the kind of man that men and boys aspire to be. And one of the things in this particular book that they found, or at least they described, is when you have a healthy society and boys are being initiated into manhood, the rituals that bring them into the society of men are exclusive to boys and men. So they don't tend to allow women in them. And that tends to be a society that's very that can defend its territory, provide for its people, and all that kind of stuff. And then when things become gender neutral, it's actually a symptom of the deterioration of a culture into, and it's like a symptom of its pre-destruction, basically. Now, they just, in this particular book, they just put that out, and they didn't draw any conclusions from it. But then there was another source talking about the Sultanate of the Harem in Ottoman Turk Empire. So as at the peak, they ended up the Sultan, I think it was Suleiman, uh, he was considered the greatest sultan ever. He refused the harem and took a woman as his wife and refused to engage with the system. Like the harem system is this really interesting system where the sultan will take a woman, and he has to leave her as soon as she gets pregnant with a son, and her and that son go off to rule a province. And it will keep going like that. So he never had a single woman that he was allowed to be in like a long-term partnership. But this particular sultan chose a single woman. And during this time, you started to see more influence of the harem over politics. So you started to see women doing a lot more political decision making. And again, the source on that one pointed out that this is generally when you start to see societies go into decline. And I think Janice Fiamengo has also commented on this, that feminism presages a decline in a society, or this women starting to go into politics, go into institutions, ritual institutions, starting to take over them, actually indicates that a culture is now in a decline. Now, I don't know if it's because if it's a symptom or if it's a cause. It could be a symptom, as in a society gets to its penultimate state, its ultimate state of being able to provide and protect itself, and then at that point in time, expansion ceases, and then you start to see more internal, like more focus on the internal. And then women start to be more involved in the politics as a result of that. Or is it something that women do? Like we get to a point of stability, the empire is able to protect and provide for itself, and then women are like, well, I want to start appropriating resources for my particular group, be it a tribe, a clan, a religion, and a region, an ideology. And then the empire descends into a competition between different groups over the resources that it has. So it shifts from being about expansion, being about protection, being about provision, to dividing up the resources based on whatever hierarchical, caste-based, or identitarian lines. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm like, if you ask me, is this a good sign? Probably not, to be honest.
No,
It's a-
no, I'm not. So yeah, I don't think they're suggesting that either. I think this is simply, when they ask, when they say, well, men have historically dominated higher education. There's a little bit of a presumptions baked into that too, because like most men probably didn't go into higher education. Only a
Mhm.
small number of men who were like qualified to enter into specific fields
Mhm.
go into higher education. And so they're sort of saying, oh, look, men were all allowed to go. In fact, it was probably better when very few people could go to higher education, because that was putting fewer people in debt with degrees that aren't very useful. And so you had people that were going into specific disciplines for very specific reasons. And most of them got something out of it that they could use in the greater world, to like build something, a business, or go into some discipline. And then one of the main motivations for men doing that were able to do that had that, operating at that level, that academic level to go into those, was in fact like using that to make the world better in whatever way their field would allow, but also to attract a high quality mate so they can start a family with them, because women were generally looking for men who were, doing that kind of work in the world. So when women enter academia, it doesn't have the same, it's not even built on the same, um, let's say, motivations, because maybe they're just going, especially today, they're just going because that's what you do. That's what we're telling everyone. Go to college. Why? Because, right? And then they go and there's like, I don't know what I'm going to major in. And they'll tell them, we'll give you loans and, you're going to be able to go. I know it's expensive. Don't worry about it right now. And so women go to college and they, some of them find something they want to do. Some of them find a degree that they really want, but most of them, they either drop out. And I know this because I've seen it, where I enter a class and there's like 100 people in my class. And when I graduated, there was like 20, because most of them dropped out, men and women, but especially the girls. And a lot of those girls who I, stayed in touch with didn't even use those degrees in their life. They just got married and pumped out a bunch of kids, and they had like 5 or 6 figures of debt. And it's not, I'm blaming them. I'm saying that this is what they were taught, but the motivations to go to school were different back in the times that this woman is referencing, because only a few men went, only a few men got degrees, and they made use of it. And one of the things they were doing it for was to attract a women. Women don't go to school to attract men. Men are not impressed by women's academic achievements or their careers or how much money they make. That's not what draws men in. So I think that the first mistake that kind of comes before any of this even happens is that we think men and women are the same in every way, like they want the same things and they have the same expectations. It's just not true. Men want women who are, basically like they're going to have different qualities. They don't care how many cars you have. They don't care how big your house is. They don't care what your bank account looks like. They just want to know, are you, going to be like compassionate and loving towards them? Are you gonna, and a lot of them are gonna want kids. That's just the reality. And you don't get like, and the truth is too, a lot of girls who go to college, they go looking for men. They're not even going because they care about their major. They don't even know what they're gonna major in. They're just like, I can meet a guy here, and that's what they do. And that's just something that people don't want to, come to terms with. So it almost doesn't, for a number of factors too, but it almost doesn't matter that women are getting more degrees at a higher level or they're enrolling more often than men, because first of all, the motivations are not the same. And the drive isn't there either, because a man knows if he goes to college, when he gets out, his degree is going to give him a ballpark, or in theory, not necessarily in practice, it's going to give him a ballpark idea of how much money he's going to make, and therefore how well he's going to be able to provide for a wife and family. A woman doesn't think about that, because if she feels as though she's got to be a provider to a man, she's already been conditioned to think of that as, he's like a leech, right? So that's not appealing to her at all. But then that's not even counting the fact that since, I don't know, like since probably like the 70s, the quality of education that we've gotten from universities has just gone way down. Like people get out of grammar school, and when I was a kid, we had an understanding of like trigonometry and advanced algebra and stuff. Nowadays, people are learning algebra in college. That's how bad it is. So the quality of education isn't there. The degrees aren't worth as much. They're not guaranteeing you a job. The motivations for women entering college is not the same as men. And it just kind of watered the whole thing down. And so now, not only are men's degrees not worth what they used to be, but they're not even getting them as often. And women are instead getting this sense of this idea that if I have a PhD, then I need to find a man with a PhD or better, whatever the next level is. So she's setting herself up for failure because she's got the wrong mindset going in, and it was fed to her, by that same, like, the culture, right? So this is why this is going to be catastrophic, because men are not earning degrees the same level as women, and women are looking for men who have done better than them. And they don't even realize that what is the point of education? Like, what is the point? That's a serious question. It's not just to know how to spell and write and do math. Like there's a point beyond that. It's to to have the skills to build something. Well, why would you build something? Well, because you want to, if you're asking a man, he'll probably be like, well, I want to, have something to build out in the world as Adam was supposed to do, go out into the world and build the garden. So they want to build. That's where men generally find the most gratification. And women want to generally support men like that, like be in their life. And we've thrown all that out. And one of the reasons is, like I said before, this idea that we just think men and women are interchangeable economic units. So they don't have their own individual desires, and that are not impacted either by nature, if you believe in, or if you are more in line with the sort of like, let's say, evolutionary psychology, which is what this video goes into, or if you're more of like just like the divine nature of male and female. It's the same, though. The fact is that we're not the same. And to even pretend that we are is like what I think part of this comes from.
I think that what you're touching on is really, really true. It may be that these structures are what make men attractive to women. And when they deteriorate, then the society is no longer producing men who are attractive to women. And that is a very big sign of the decline of that society. And men will just leave and try to find another way to become attractive to women, another cooperative structure that they can invest in that, in the end of the day, makes it more possible for them to have a family. Is that sort of what you're getting at, or?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that men and women are motivated differently because, and I think you could say that there's an evolutionary component, which she does kind of go into. If you think about it, if women have been the gatekeepers to reproduction for like all of history, then what kind of man are you going to get after 100 generations of that? And what kind of woman are you going to get after 100 generations of women who are basically just picking the most fit men, at least in their vicinity, to reproduce with? And I think that men are the way they are now because of all of that selection, right? So men are thinking in terms of their legacy. I mean, even like, I mean, not to get political, but even like if you just look at some, I don't know, high profile figure like Joe Biden, who just like did like his, final address to the country before he left. That's like, he knows that no matter what you think of him, that's his legacy. Like that's what, not just his children, but like what people will remember him by. Or when someone dies, like Jimmy Carter passed away, and everybody's talking about what it is he left behind. this is the stuff that men are generally concerned with.
Yes.
So it's not
Yeah, I
just
get what you're
like,
saying.
yeah, you see what I'm saying? It's not just like how many kids they have, but like what are they leaving them? What is the world if they know they're gonna go, because we're all gonna go at some point. Men are more concerned about what is left behind when they're gone, especially
Mm,
if they have something like children or grandchildren, hopefully, that they are going to be leaving. And that's why I think when men, at least we used to instill this in them. I don't know if we do this anymore, but it used to be the case that if a man was going to go to higher education, or if he was going to go into a career like law or medicine, he was thinking about how he was going to improve that discipline, or hope to improve it, so that his children are better off, and by
mm,
extension his children's society is better off. And part of that is also like, being appealing or being attractive to women, so that the opportunity to have children is there. But women, even if they say they're motivated by the same thing, it just doesn't work the same way, because men don't look at that in women. They just want to
mm,
see someone who's going to be, a good wife and mother. um
mm.
because again, it's not about you, right? It's about the future. That's what I think.
Um, I mean, there is also I could offer up another data point to that.
Mm.
So I've spoken about this before in hunter-gatherer tribes, the most productive woman would be paired with the best hunter. So maybe there is, and honestly, in the
Yeah, but
past,
she's not productive in the same way that the hunter
no,
is.
no, 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 no,
Right. That's
no,
yeah. That. Yeah. I mean, I
yeah,
think.
essentially,
I'm not saying that these men who are working hard to achieve are like, just chained to the fridge or whatever. I'm saying that they're not, but they're not like in competition with these men. You know
yeah.
what I'm
Well,
saying? So
yeah. The thing is that in the past, I think there was a lot more of women's industry, shall we say?
sure. Yeah.
So there was a lot like there it it wasn't a situation, well, women were contributing their own thing to the family. So I'm like, on the one hand, and that used to be part of femininity. For example, the ability to spin was seen as a huge part of being a woman. Like it was seen as integral to their femininity in a way. That I don't think that we have that kind of idea anymore. Like there's a particular skill set that women have and bring to the world that's that seems very tied to their identities as women. You know what I mean? I mean, we have that for men. I'm not sure if we have that for women anymore. It's all, well, you got to be like a man to have use in the greater world.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's primarily focused on liberation, which
Mhm.
doesn't it sounds fine, but it doesn't actually like
Mm,
impose anything. It's like, being in an open world game in God mode where you can't be killed and you just do whatever you want.
mm,
So like you're not going to learn anything from that, but that is kind of
mm.
the stage we're at. It's like, well, how many dudes you want to bang in a day? 1,000? Yeah, dude, go girl. Right? That's where we're at. And I know that not all women want. I know most women don't want that, but my point is that there isn't, and um there are no speed limits. There are no like expectations. I think that's like, oppressive. And so yeah, I think that's the main problem for women is they are denied nothing. And
Yeah,
so they don't do
but
anything really, because nothing
and
matters.
the other
So
consequence is that their actions are meaningless.
yeah, exactly. Their actions don't matter because no one's going to say that's right or that's wrong or do better. So they
Yeah.
never have to. And so, yeah, they're free from judgment, which
I
is what
remember there was
is, a big concern. But
I remember there was, a journalist who talked to, believe it was like an infantry soldier,
mhm.
um, but he was like part of an elite unit, and they talked about him reintegrating back into society, coming back to the States. And he described the situation where he was in this grocery store and he was looking down this aisle at like cereal. And it was like just one of those large grocery stores, which has like, a couple hundred types of cereal. And he's just staring at it. And the journalist was like, yeah, I guess you were not used to having so much choice and plenty, to enjoy, right? Because you're coming from a situation that was very much about survival, very much restricted in what you could eat, what you could do. And the soldier looked at him and said, no. I looked down that aisle and I saw all of the choices and none of them meant a damn thing. None of these choices matter. So many choices, none of them mattered at all. And he had come from a place where you chose to dig your sleep spot mattered. What you paid attention to mattered. If you missed a single thing on the road, you could end up dead. Every single thing he did had huge consequences for himself and everybody else around him. And what was stunning to him was coming home and realizing none of the choices that people made mattered at all.
Yeah.
It's this perception that you have this gigantic grocery. It's for women. It's this gigantic grocery, and you can choose whatever you want, but none of it matters. None of it at all. And I think that attitude, that feeling that women like, is to be in that place and have all of this potential choice. Even though it doesn't matter, it's all just about getting the perfect sugary cereal that you want to taste, right? But it's all sugary cereal. It's all sugary corn, right? You want to get that feeling of having so much plenty, so much choice is almost like inherent to, I think, female mammals, because they want to have the resources to raise their offspring. So that this is the ideal moment for a human or for a female mammal, is just to be presented with so much plenty, but none of the choices matter. And that doesn't matter, because what they're after is the plenty, is the absolute variety of choices, right? That is perfection. That is utopia. That is heaven for a woman, to have an infinite array of choices and no consequences. You can never eat all the cake. You can never eat all the cereal. You can never have too much cock. You can never do this, that, and the other thing to excess. You never have to experience a consequence for any of it. And yet it's such a meaningless life. And I think that when women go into places like academia, to bring it back to the topic, they bring that attitude of, I want infinite choice and zero consequence for these infinite choices. And so it's like they take it, they go into these positions like you were talking about. Men go in to get legacy. They go in as an expression of wanting to consume something. Does that make sense? Like the degrees are articles of consumption rather than stepping stones to a legacy, stepping stones to developing something greater, right?
Right.
And,
yeah.
Okay, so I will cease to speak.
All right. I got a super chat I should read. I think it's first super chat from Baby Dog of Justice. Hello, Baby Dog of Justice, who gives us $5 in New Zealand pesos. And I believe he has a picture of Yuri Bezmenov as his profile pic, so very base. And he says, lol, academia asking why are men, etc., then proceed to discuss it among their own group, because to ask them would lead to difficult answers. Yes, indeed. Very true. Thank you. Okay, so thanks for that. Let's listen to the rest of this video, or this clip at least, about the differences.
Sciences, computer sciences, mathematics sciences, physical sciences, psychology, social sciences, and engineering, the percentage of female faculty with less than 10 years experience is 1.6 to 4.8 times higher than the percentage of female faculty with 30 years experience or more. If current trends persist, women will gain increasing influence over the direction of the university. The inclusion of women in higher education
Was that
increasing influence, huh?
yeah. Well, there is
boy.
that's another thing too, is that, like, one thing I don't think she addresses this, because maybe it's a little too speculative and they just want to stick to the what they know and the data and the facts. But I think that what this also might suggest is, well, first of all, I think that fewer men see the point in going to college unless it's for something very specific. And again, I propose to you guys, what's the point of school? Like what's the point of school right now, right? Um and cuz I mean you can get an education online. Like I'm saying like what's the point of going to a university if unless you're looking to go into debt? Or you can afford it. Um, but there is another thing too is that if there are more and more women in sort of like higher level positions of faculty in universities, could that have an effect on the chances of men being hired? Because we know that there are fewer male teachers at the grammar level, like K through 8, and a lot of this has to do with stigma around male teachers because of, this like fear or concern for the safety of students because of this, idea of men as inherently predatory, even though there are lots and lots and lots of stories of women uh, sexually abusing their students. But we don't even call it sexual abuse, right? We call it an affair or something else. And so, I think that that could have an impact on men's participation in the education system. I substitute teach for a year, and all in the schools I went to here, I was the only man, and almost at every school except for like coaches of like teams, like the sports teams. So I think that, and if you think about it, if you take that at the K through 8 level, you can expand it out, and I think it has an impact on the high school level, and I could see it having an impact on the college level. And then when you also take into consideration things like Title IX, the Dear Colleague letter, and how that's affected the student body, I could see how it could also impact the faculty as well. So it could be a combination of things. Maybe men are less likely to want to become teachers because they don't want to deal with all of those things. They don't want to be seen as predators or inherently dangerous to the students there. But it also could be that the women involved in the hiring want other women, and they have like a bias, or there's like a favoritism towards hiring women. So they do. And on top of the fact, the fact that women are more drawn towards teaching positions as well. So it's a number of things. Alton, what are you doing? Did you step away? What is that? Is that a placeholder? Is that a cat? Oh, it's a cat.
It's a cat.
Okay.
Sorry, I just I had to look and see if we have any thank yous to give, and we didn't. So I just want to remind everyone, if you want to support the show, yes, this is Mia. She's recovering. She was very anemic. So we decided to give her a little bit of a break from the boys. And yeah, if you want to help out, not related to the cat, feedthebadger.com/support, and that will help the show. And if you want to send us a message, feedthebadger.com/justthetip is best way to send us a tip and a message. And it's very much appreciated if you would do so. Send it through there, and Brian will pick it up and we will talk about it. And so once again, feedthebadger.com/support to support the show. And I want to do a shout out to Great Indoors for suggesting this particular topic. I think it's a good topic, good to respond to and talk about. And yeah, that is a
All
cat.
right.
It's not a placeholder.
So I'm going to jump ahead to 605 to look at the impact. So we'll go here. Well, I just want to see what this is. Support quotas. Yeah, no, we'll jump ahead here. All right. I think this is good.
Controversial conclusion. A 2018 study of over 4,000 full-time college students on issues related to free speech on campus and diversity and inclusion found that.
Oh yeah, this is important because I talked about this study a while, probably in 2018, because it's been a few years when I learned this. I think you'll find this is basically they're trying to figure out who is generally in favor of free speech. Probably a pretty important thing when it comes to, academia, college, and just the truth. So what do you guys think? Let's take a look.
71% of men reported that protecting free speech is more important than promoting an inclusive society. 59% of women said promoting an inclusive society is more important than protecting free speech.
I
Okay,
mean,
how do you support a inclusive society without free speech, ladies? Like, seriously.
well, you have to be able to shut down. No, they think that they're not against free speech. They just think that being inclusive is more important. So you have to be tolerant of people who are intolerant of free speech because you want to be inclusive to them. I mean,
Okay,
I'm trying to explain it. I don't know. It's about priorities, right? So
yes.
women think that being inclusive is more important than freedom. Men think that freedom is more important than being inclusive.
Freedom of speech is foundational to inclusion, though, as that's where I'm struggling.
I know where you, I know.
Like, I mean, do they realize all the crap that happened in Europe because people wanted to silence others about their religion, about their ideologies? Like, okay, all right.
Well, but
Isn't
here's another thing that might sound like a conundrum, but I don't know if it really is. If women are more agreeable, like they test higher in agreeableness than men, men are more disagreeable, then why are women more against free speech? Well, because they think that free speech can be disagreeable, so they put
Mm,
agreeability or inclusivity or tolerance above freedom of speech because they think freedom of speech, I think that it's often interpreted as, freedom to be mean. And so we don't want people being mean because that's not inclusive, that's not agreeable. So I
mm,
think that, and of course, only the women know what it means to be mean. Their gut tells them, this is mean, therefore it shouldn't be allowed, right? It's like Marge. Remember Marge Simpson when she was like, um, I don't like this, so you guys shouldn't be able to enjoy it either. She like was why
mm,
the kids were watching some violent movie or something.
mm.
Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
but the other thing is that academia is about freedom of speech. It's about entertaining lots
not
of stuff.
anymore. Not
Okay.
anymore.
Of
It's
course.
about making a home here. It's not about it's about making a home here. It's not
Yeah, but
about
not
that.
making like, but here's the great irony of all of this. They talk about inclusion and being kind, but there's always a group of people that ends up being scapegoated by all of these people who supposedly want to be inclusive and kind. And that group of people is men.
Yeah.
Like I said, like I've repeated multiple times. If you could turn a progressive into their caricature of a conservative simply by saying, well, what about men who have issues? And then all of their progressivism disappears like a fart in a furnace, just gone. And
Yep.
it's like, yeah, you can talk about
Well,
inclusion, you can talk about kindness, but not if
well,
you're
again,
scapegoating someone.
yeah, again, they have a hierarchy. There is a hierarchy operating here, even if they claim that they believe in like equity or whatever. The hierarchy is that
Mm,
women's idea of what is considered free speech takes prominence over men's idea of what is considered free speech. So when men speak out of turn something that these women decided should not be free speech, then it just isn't, which is why they can say we think it's more important to be inclusive because we know, because they can read minds. I don't know if you guys know that when you say free speech, you mean mean words, you mean gamer
mm,
words, and we don't want you using gamer words on college campuses because it is not about a space of academic thought. It is about making a home here. But
mm.
anyway, um
Yeah, but
so
only a
yeah,
home for people that
take your racist Halloween costumes and get out. All right, okay. Let's there's more data here. So what we know,
yeah.
so men are generally like it's about tolerance. Men have a higher tolerance for, uncomfortable language than women. And that's why men are like, yeah, whatever, say what you want, you know? And women are like, no, that's not cool. We don't want to hurt any feelings. And that's just what it boils down to. It's very simple.
58% of men said that it is never acceptable to shut down speakers or to try to prevent them from delivering their remarks. 58% of women said that it was sometimes or always acceptable.
So again, women are okay with shutting down speech that they don't like. And men are like, and honestly, 58%, those are rookie numbers. You need to pump those numbers up. Because I think that men should be like, if you want to be able to say anything, you have to be in support of free speech, especially because guys, you're the ones being shut down usually. So anyway,
and this is the horrible future, because often what they're talking about when they would want to silence people, like when we prioritize comfort over excellence, we get neither. What we get is lukewarm bullshit, basically. All right, let's keep going.
Yep. Okay. You get the cast of Wicked fake crying while they hold hands in an interview. That's what you get. It's like the worst milquetoast shit.
And said that it was sometimes or always acceptable. A 2022 paper in which 574 undergraduates, graduates, and PhD students were asked to allocate 100 points towards 5 different academic priorities found that men allocated more points toward academic freedom and advancing knowledge than women. And
so so these are PhD students, so very highly educated students, and they got to allocate priorities by gender. So when you look, the blue is men, the orange is women. So men put advancing knowledge at the top. Okay, this is like seeking the truth. That's what men prioritize the highest. Followed by, it looks like, academic rigor, which is the hard work, academic freedom. And then after that, you got emotional well-being and social justice, which for men rates the lowest, but not low enough in my opinion. But hey, it's college. I get it. Most of them are probably pretty woke anyway. And women generally did not value those things as much. They still valued advancing knowledge a lot, but they also put emotional well-being way up there. So
this is
what were you
absolute
gonna say?
crap. Well, I mean, it speaks to what I said earlier, that when women get into these institutions, they regard them as sources of resources. See, when you look at what men prioritize, they're prioritizing freedom, merit, knowledge, right? Those are the virtues that create resources, right? That create more understanding of the world. It's not like a physical resource. It's a mental resource, but it's very valuable because that mental, like that knowledge resource can itself be then applied in the greater world to find more resources. So, a good example is nuclear physics, ultimately leading to, of course, the nuclear bomb, but also nuclear resources, almost near infinite energy, right? So this knowledge can be applied in the greater world to create resources, but it itself is a resource. In particular, when you look at it in terms of social resource, the recognition, like the scientists who get recognized for their contributions, that's a social resource, right? You want to feel celebrated. So when women go into this, like men go into this and they see this in terms of what are the virtues necessary to create resources, in this case, the knowledge base. Women go into it, and I'm not saying they all do, and this is actually really disappointing because I would assume, oh, am I still there?
Yeah, your camera's frozen.
It's coming back. It's coming back along.
All right. I'm just waiting on it.
All right. If it doesn't pop back up again, I will switch to another one. But ultimately, when you're looking at this, men are looking at this in terms of the virtues necessary to generate resources. Women are looking at this in terms of what gives them the right to either appropriate resources or distribute them. See what I'm saying? So they're not about creating the greater knowledge base. They're about controlling it and distributing resources. They bring, and a big resource for women is emotional well-being, the feeling of safety, the feeling of being admired, the feeling of being respected, and all of this other stuff. Not having mistakes pointed out. you know.
Yeah, I think the feeling of being admired or liked is part of the safety thing, because you feel like if everybody likes you, then you're not in any danger, especially because the way that female aggression differs from male aggression, right? So, a woman who feels liked by her peers feels safe because of it. Because why would you hurt me? You like me, right? So,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, and like I said, the women are more focused on the distribution, the acquiring and distribution of resources, and maybe also the like refining of resources. Whereas men are more focused on actually building resources. This is what I've seen, and nobody wants to address this. So
mhm.
when women take over a institution, an empire, a kingdom, whatever, they turn it from acquiring and protecting resources to distributing them based on whatever, like based on their social aggression, I would say. Like you were talking about how social media is like Call of Duty for women. Well, that's women
Yeah.
fighting over the distribution of resources.
Yeah, and some of those resources are, again, clout. That's one,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, yeah. So anyway, this back to this chart. So as you can see, women in with PhDs tend to it's almost like even, but they think social justice, academic rigor, and academic freedom are at about the same level. This is like probably where a lot of these conflicts come from. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if, aside from the advancing knowledge and emotional well-being thing, but also, I wonder how much of one informs the other. Like, if you
Mm-hmm.
think that advancing knowledge serves your social justice, then yes, you're probably going to treat it higher. What is the saying that they always say? Go educate yourself, do better. Hope that helps. Yikes.
Mm.
you know?
I mean, are we ready for this? Like,
Yeah.
are we ready for our empire to have peaked and now everybody's going to be squabbling about what they are owed until we implode?
It's going to be one giant human resources.
Yeah.
We're all
Are
going
we
to
ready
have
for that?
to.
Like, is this what we want? Is this
Yeah.
otherwise?
Oh,
And
this.
the only alternative is that we
Yeah.
need to have a way of bringing women to account. We need to have a way of blaming women and holding them to standards. And I mean, everybody, like, as soon as I say, "Oh, we got to blame women," everybody and their dog freaks the fuck out. It's like complete explosion of chaos. Like, how can you do that? Yeah, I'm going to do it. And you can't stop me. I'm going to blame women.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. I'm not even going to qualify it. I'm going to blame women. I blame women. There you go. You can all
All right.
spaz out.
Let's go to the
All
next
right.
data point.
Women
But not
allocated
Brian.
more
Brian
points
doesn't
towards
spaz out.
social justice
No.
and emotional well-being than men. A 2020 paper in which 140 academic faculty at colleges and universities in the United States completed the same 5-point allocation task and found that women allocated more points to social justice and emotional well-being than men, and consequently had fewer points to allocate to advancing knowledge, academic rigor, and academic freedom, although these latter three did not reach statistical significance.
So she said that they followed up and did it again, and women doubled down on the social justice pie chart, and that the other ones didn't even like register. I think. Let me go back and just double check, make sure I heard that right.
Allocated more points to social justice.
So this is let me go back to where she says what year this was done.
Found that men allocated more points toward academic freedom. Graduates, and PhD students were asked to allocate 100 points towards 5 different academic priorities. Found that men allocated more points toward academic freedom and advancing knowledge than women, and women allocated more points towards social justice and emotional well-being than men. A 2020 paper in which 140 academic faculty at colleges and universities in the United States completed the same 5-point allocation task and found that women allocated more points to social justice and emotional well-being than men, and consequently had fewer points to allocate to advancing knowledge, academic rigor, and academic freedom, although these latter three did not reach statistical significance. A 2021 paper found that male researchers were more likely to specify scientific progress or the advancement of knowledge as the aim of their research. Female researchers were more likely to specify societal progress or external usefulness as the aim of their research.
So it's only getting worse. It's the 2021 now, right? So every time they do this study, women go more and more into the social justice realm and less concerned about the truth. And men, well, they basically stay about the same, or maybe they move slightly towards the truth more. So what's the point of education? What's the point?
This is, and the thing is that what we're seeing is women completely without male influence. More and more and more and more and more. So they're getting sucked into this idea that emotions are more important than truth. But how do you build a bridge when emotions are more important than truth? The answer is you don't. You build a death trap. How do you run a society with these virtues? The answer is you can't. And nobody is willing to acknowledge that. Nobody is willing to acknowledge the fact that femininity doesn't belong everywhere. It doesn't work everywhere. It doesn't function everywhere. But we think if we think it's like a universal panacea. We think if we slap some femininity onto that leaky pipe, it's gonna solve everything. Lube the car engine with some femininity. We can repair the leather, the broken leather with some femininity putty. And either that or blame men. Those are our two ways we solve stuff. Put more women in or blame men. That's it. This is our toolkit as a society.
Yeah.
God. Oh, good Lord. Okay, let's keep going.
All right.
Female scholars were more likely than their male counterparts to report that creating a better society inspires their work and to place higher value on research that has benefited society. 2021 survey of over 468 psychology professors from the top 100 universities in the US found that when asked whether scholars should be completely free to pursue research questions without fear of institutional punishment for their research conclusions, among men, the majority, 60% said yes. Among women, the majority, 59%, said it's complicated, and 39% said yes, and only 0.6% said no.
So this is like going back to this study here. Should scholars be completely free to pursue research questions without fear of institutional punishment for their conclusions? Again, I think that more men should say yes, but a lot of men said yes. 60% of men said yes. 40-something% of women said yes. So even though men's numbers are still too low, because I think the answer is obviously yes, unless they were asked the question in like a weird way that made them a little uncomfortable with the answer. I have to wonder sometimes. Even that could be the verbatim. I mean, there is a quote. So, should scholars be completely free to pursue research questions without fear of institutional punishment for their conclusions? So, I don't know. What do you guys think? What's the answer? What's your answer to that question? But women are saying it's complicated, which is basically saying, I want to say no, but I don't want to be, a spoil sport about it. So I'm going to say it's complicated. Like, how is it complicated? What does that mean? Like, if you like, let's say, I don't know, just as a hypothetical, let's say that there's like this cold going around and, there's been a medical development that was done that could, sort of protect people from said cold. And somebody was like, I'm going to look into the research behind the development of this miracle drug. And oh my goodness, I have found out that there are risks associated with it. I'm going to tell everyone. And they're like, no, you can't do that because it'll make people uncomfortable. Now we're going to have to essentially get you to shoot yourself and then call it an accident. it's a hypothetical. I'm just throwing it out there. So like, let's say, you work at an airplane company and you're like, oh, these planes, they're not being built well. I've researched the development of these planes and they seem dangerous. think I'm going to speak up. And then somebody says, you can't do that because it's going to make people uncomfortable. So we're just going to have to, do something about it. So yeah, I mean, like, I think that the truth matters, and I don't think that should be a hard question to answer. So, all right.
And only 0.6% said no. When asked whether scientists should prioritize the truth or social equity goals when the two conflict, among men, the majority prioritized truth.
So this is another one, okay? So the response among psychology professors to the question, if pursuit of truth and social equity goals appear to come into conflict, which should scientists prioritize? Men said truth, and women said it's complicated, overwhelmingly, or at least in majority of women. And actually a majority of women said no, although it's still a minority, like, in the overall.
Women, on the other hand, the majority said it's complicated, and 43% prioritized the truth. 4.8% prioritized social equity. The overall theme of these differences is that men are more committed than women to the pursuit of truth as the raison d'etre of science, when women are more committed to various moral goals, such as equity, inclusion, and the protection of vulnerable groups. Consequently, men are more tolerant of controversial and potentially offensive scientific findings being pursued, disseminated, and discussed. And women are more willing to obstruct or suppress science perceived to be potentially harmful or offensive.
So if women are more willing to suppress scientific conclusions because they're offensive, is that science? Is that even doing
Essentially what this
science?
means is the more women get into science, that's it. We're done. The science is over. We are not going to be finding out anything new. It requires merit, which requires hurting feelings. It requires being potentially offensive. Do not fall, cat. Don't fall. Don't fall. Okay. Ah! Okay.
Well, you're kind of doing that,
Yeah,
playing with the
yeah.
cat. It's like,
Oh wait, she jumped
like
off, so she's
Lindsay
fine.
gets JoJo to do the zoomies,
Mhm.
and our floors creak, and so sometimes the downstairs neighbor gets upset. And then Lindsay will be like, I don't know why he's doing this. Like, because you are doing that to him. Don't do that to him, and it won't happen. It's like women
She's
do
fine.
things, and then the consequences of their actions come out, and they act like, oh, how did this happen? I cause and effect? What is that? Anyway,
Oh no, I'm
sorry.
just no, it's okay.
I don't want your cat to die, but if he
Uh,
falls and breaks his back,
She won't fall. She's fine.
oh, she's a
She
cat.
did
She'll probably land on her
she's
feet.
calmed down. Yeah, she'll come. She is she has this habit of letting herself getting very close to the edge. So yeah, in some sense, I didn't think through the flirt pole with the little thing at the end very well. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, she's also a very lackadaisical cat. So I guess it's just the intersection of a female cat with a female human. All right. So let us how much more do
Anyway,
we have here?
let me look at this time, see if I'm done with this time code.
Okay,
We're looking at
let
the
me get
psychological differences between men and women and the implications, a little bit more to this bit, but I think we see the general trend. And none of this should be surprising. But yeah, I mean, this is interesting data nonetheless. It's almost like men and women are not the same.
yeah.
Put more simply, men are relatively more interested in advancing what is empirically correct, and women are relatively more interested in advancing what is morally desirable. Of course, it is often difficult to know what information is empirically correct and what information is most likely to improve society. Therefore, such judgments will often be subjective and vulnerable to various biases and preferences. But in general, men appear to be less concerned about the potential moral consequences of empirical information than women. So when a scholar forwards...
Wait a second. What are the potential moral consequences of not pursuing the virtues necessary for knowledge? Like, what are the potential moral consequences of not doing your job? Like, I'm sorry, but constructing, and first of all, is it moral to constantly be constructing victim classes? Like, is that really morality? Like, can we say, hey, wait a second? I mean, 'cause what it ends up doing is it's constructing a caste system based on perceived victimhood. And yet, for some reason, we never include all of the shit that happens in men in history. Like, do we have to pay reparations to men for forcing them to fight in World War I and II? Hmm? Do we have to
Mhm.
pay reparations for basically creating like when politicians are in some kind of deadlock, we just go throw some men at each other, get them to kill each other to make the decision for us. Do we have to pay reparations for that? Like, it's very selective. I notice it's incredibly selective and self-serving how they construct their supposed vulnerable groups. They're omitting a lot of stuff when they do it. So, I mean, to me, that's not morality. It is the opposite of morality, really. Like
Mhm.
and I don't know. So I mean, this idea that women are bringing morality into academia by breaking what academia is supposed to do and reconstructing it in terms of, and again, is that morality to say I am the arbiter of where resources are supposed to go? I get to say where the resources, men make the resources, I get to decide where they go. Is that really morality? Or is that just being bossy?
No, I mean, I think that the one thing that we're missing here is that if men are more interested in pursuit of truth, um maybe there's a it's like we're misusing a tool. And I don't like to say men and women are tools, but like we're misusing this resource of the masculine perspective by essentially trying to make women's sensibilities fit into this male space of like putting the pursuit of, actual like measurable data out there so that you can make a moral decision informed by said data, right? And
Mhm.
I think that we're just like what's happening is that women are trying to do this without the male perspective. So the truth becomes secondary, and so they're operating based on feelings, and that's how you get, like I don't know, open borders and people locked in their homes for years, and
Mhm.
because there's nobody like looking at, like somebody, we get a super chow from mnemonics who basically said for $5, if we don't know what's true, how could we even pursue equity, right? Or just what is morally right? Like
Mm.
we can't make decisions on, it's like you need the data, the intelligence that you acquire in order to make a choice about it that is based in wisdom, but wisdom is empty if there's no data to pull from, right? So you need both. And well, at least I don't know if this woman is suggesting that. I think that again, I don't think she's making an ought. She's just saying what is. But I think that yeah, when women are saying no, I think that being morally right. It's like Alexandria Ocasio Cortez said it exactly. She's like, people are too focused on being factually correct instead of being morally right. And it's like, well, yeah, but if you're not factually correct, you can't make a moral case because you're saying based on what? You need
Mm.
something real to base it on.
But I noticed that the first thing that when women went into academia, they precluded the idea that men could be a vulnerable group. Like they completely locked men out of that.
Hmm.
And they did it through a series of lies and m- misrepresentations. And so how is it? How can you be moral when what you're calling moral is based on a whole bunch of incorrect and enforced like this attitude towards how reality is structured is enforced and it's incorrect. Like there is, let me try to explain this simply. Feminism is a lie. It has never been proven, and it has never even been framed in a way that could have been proven true or false. And yet it's presented as an absolute truth about reality, namely that men in power equals women oppressed. And it isn't even framed in that way, because that is a causal statement that you could prove true or false. And the way that you prove true or false is you look at situations where men are in power and you see the situation for women, if it's better, and you determine whether it's better or worse than the situation for men. And I can tell you that even in Afghanistan, more men are dying. So there's an entire bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is men are locked out of. Even in Afghanistan, women are provided for and protected in a way that men aren't. And that's just ignored. It's not even considered in the analysis of who society benefits. And as a result of having this this foundational lie, everything above that and beyond that, the alphabet mafia, the migrant issue, all of this is based on something that it itself is incorrect. So you're talking, like you're saying, Brian, how do we know that it's real? The answer is no, we just feel like it feels good to say that women are victims relative to men. Makes everybody happy, right? Men feel like they have a purpose. Women feel like they're valued, you know? So everybody's happy. Therefore, it must be true. Well, no, it isn't. And everything beyond that, downstream of that, is based on a premise that's incorrect. So how can it be moral? It's all a tottering web of lies, you know? And if we don't start with logic and truth, we just end up in a labyrinth of lies. And the more that we try to push these lies, the more that we add lies, the more unstable the structure becomes. Whatever we've tried to build from it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you
All right.
parse anything of worth from that?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Okay, let me see. I think there's a little bit left in this, and then there's like one more.
Oh, for the love of God, Jeff C says it's not about the society if women are being treated like property. Women.
Cattle!
Oh God! Would
All
you
right, wait.
just
He could be
stop?
trolling. Could be trolling. Don't take
Okay,
the bait.
okay. If you're trolling, fair enough.
All
If you're
right.
not, please
Yeah.
enlighten yourself.
No one even talked about property, so don't just
Yeah.
that's just not a serious person.
It's a potentially true, but also potentially offensive claim or set of data, women will be more likely to strive to suppress it than men. As is always the case when discussing group differences, these are averages. It is important to emphasize that plenty of women champion academic freedom and resist the claim that scholars should suppress research for moral.
Yeah. Who cares? I get it. Like, this is the not all women are like that. No, we know you don't have to do
I'm
that.
not
I know
one of
you're
them.
trying to protect your job.
I'm not one of them, and I'm really tired of people like this appealing to the existence of women like me to cape for the women who are destroying the virtues that I hold dear. Right? I'm tired of that.
Mm-hmm.
This is the average. This is what women are doing. Let's blame them. They are going to destroy academia. They're going to destroy what it is there for if they have not
left
already.
of it. It's all, yeah, I was gonna say it's almost like it's lost almost all credibility at this point. Like, there is not much that you could say in defense of academia as
And
it
it's
currently
funny
is.
because this all started with feminism being allowed to progress without even having when you have an idea of how the world works, you frame it as a causal statement. If men are in power, then women are oppressed, or women's situation is worse than men's, right? If men are in power, they construct a society for their own benefit. And then you can actually look at that and determine whether or not it's true. This all came back to that. We gave, academia apparently gave women a branch of scholarship that was entirely based on feels as reals, because that's what feminism is. There is nothing
Arithmetic.
logical in it. There is no actual scientific rigor in any of the dogma. And they basically consumed branches of science like sociology, like social work, like dealing with victims of domestic violence and sexual
Therapy.
assault. They consumed it all into this non-scientific, like this this makes us feel good. Women being victims of men, it all makes everybody feel good. Men feel special because they're the one guy who doesn't make women into victims, and women feel special because they're the center of attention. And they turn that into a foundational concept in academia, and now everything in academia is being pulled into that black hole and consumed. And I remember 2018, there was somebody in our Discord who was very much part of academia, right? And he was upset with me because I said that feminism delegitimates everything in academia. The fact that this cancer grew in academia means there's something seriously wrong with academia. And he was upset because he was like, I was throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and he was a part of academia, and he was like, oh, why would this discredit? Now, 7 years later, everything is falling into that black hole. Everything that was left that was good about academia is being sucked into this black hole. You allowed feminists to get in. You allowed feminists to do non-science that had absolutely nothing to do with any kind of scientific rigor. Scientific discipline was everything about emotions and how they felt and getting money and clout. You let them do that, and now that black hole is consuming everything in academia. Everything. It's going to get engineering. It's going to get nuclear physics. All of it is going to be sacrificed to the god of this stupidity. Good grief.
All right, let's listen to more.
Publishing process is likely to increase, and support for academic freedom is likely to decline. This does not mean, of course, that women do not care about truth or that men do not care about social justice.
They don't care enough.
Yeah, but let's see what she says.
Means that men and women weigh the relative importance of these values differently. In many cases, this will be irrelevant. But in those cases where truth and morality appear to conflict, men and women may adjudicate slightly differently. Because the social sciences are full of potentially morally relevant data about human nature and social disparities, this sex difference may be especially relevant to the future development of disciplines like anthropology, psychology, sociology, and other fields that study humans closely. The evolution of sex priorities and preferences.
Yeah, this might be a little bit differently. This is about sexual selection. I think that it's interesting that she's bringing this up because I do think that it goes back to something I said before. Sexual selection has not only already impacted us, like I am a product of my father being selected and his father being selected and so on for whatever fitness traits they had. And so it's going to make the person I am, right? And all the other men who are alive today are products of that. And the pressure on men. So, like, if we think of all of our evolutionary, reproductive history as one, giant eugenics project, which in a way it is, because I mean, that's just the reality of it, is that women select and there's men that are left behind. And some women, but most women get to reproduce if they want to. And very few men do, or at least like a smaller there's like a bottleneck at points, right? So that means that men are just like over time, they've been more sort of refined over time than women have. So that changes things already. But also, this again goes to what I was saying earlier, where when a man goes into an academic field or some kind of field, he's trying to build something that shows his way of bringing value to society, which in turn grants him an opportunity to attract a mate and have a family. That's just how, sort of like coldly breaking it down to its most fundamental base components. Women don't have the same pressure. They're usually just, even if they choose to go into a field or whatever, they don't have to. They can just find a man and say, I'll take you, and that's it. And then, just don't be garbage to him and you'll probably be fine. So I think that that's why she's going to this. But if you want, we could listen to this too.
These sex differences in preferences and priorities for academia are consistent with a broader pattern of sex differences that have been extensively discussed and debated in the scholarly literature. Although the causes of these differences remain contested, it's believed that evolutionary psychology, EP, provides the most fruitful framework for understanding them. According to EP, the ultimate source of many sex differences is sexual selection, or the share of evolutionary selective pressures related specifically to reproduction. Sexual selection is ultimately governed by the level of parental investment of each sex, and sex differences are a result of differences in parental investment. In most mammalian species, including humans, females invest relatively more in offspring, whereas males invest relatively more in mating opportunities.
Apes together strong. I just wanted to say that.
Although this fundamental disparity has likely produced
Return to
psychological
monkey.
differences in numerous domains, mating, for example, two are especially relevant: competition and interests. Men compete more overtly than women for status. They are the larger and more physically aggressive sex, especially as that aggression becomes mortal, and they are more contest-oriented, vying against each other openly. Women, on the other hand, compete more covertly, using relatively safer and more subtle methods. Men also compete mortally against other groups of men and have therefore evolved traits and tendencies that encourage the creation and coordination of large coalitions with status hierarchies. Women, on the other hand, prefer egalitarian social relations when in large groups, and are not as predisposed.
Well, you know what? Let's let this.
Yeah,
finish.
I want to let this finish, and then you can go ahead and say whatever. Oops.
As men to coordinating in large groups. Consequently, women prioritize equality more than men. Perhaps the most dramatic way of expressing this suite of competition-related psychological differences is to describe men as warriors and women as warriors.
Okay. So
Mm,
you can go ahead and say what you wanted to say about the other thing. Do you want to go back to that graph, that chart that she put out?
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So go a little bit
So
further. Here's
what?
the thing. Again, more physically aggressive. Then why are women equal, if not more aggressive in relationships? Right? Why are we finding out more and more that women's sexual violence may be equal to that of men's? Okay. And yes, men compete mortally against other groups of men, but they also engage in higher degrees of cooperation. Right? Women cooperate to divide up resources, but they don't cooperate as well to build those resources in the first place. The hierarchies that you see men form are in order to facilitate the building or maintenance or defense of resources, right? It's not just they're creating hierarchies because they hate each other. They're creating hierarchies for a specific goal. And I think that a lot of what we term egalitarian social relations with women is more as a result of envy. Women don't like other women getting shit they don't get, at the same time as they want other women to feel jealous of the things that they get. And that sort of ends up creating this like lukewarm miasma where nobody gets anything in particular, because they're basically destroying. If a woman gets more than another woman, they tear her apart, right? And that's not egalitarian. It's not egalitarian as a moral good. It's more like the crab of buckets. Like, is that every crab is in the bucket? Well, that's not
Well,
egalitarian.
that is a form of
That's egalitarian.
that's what equality usually boils down to, is that
Every
we're all
crab is in the
poor.
bucket.
Yeah, that's right.
Every crab is
Because
in the bucket.
someone who's that's why they're generally against merit, because someone who's doing well is actually bringing everybody else down. So I don't
Yeah.
think it's wrong that she writes women prefer egalitarian social relations, but that's because, again, as long as it's focused on security and equality, which means no one standing out in the crowd, nobody like rising up too much. So that's kind of what it looks like, on the ground.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's how much do you have any more time codes or do we just watch?
No, I think I got one more, but I did get a super chat. Yeah, super chat from Gary Thomas for $5, and he says, I read somewhere once that throughout all of human history, 50% of men, or 50 to 60% of men, and hold on a second, I'm sorry. And 95% of women have had children. Interesting when you think about it. Well, yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, that's not quite accurate. There was two genetic pinch points in history. One, I think, 100,000 years ago, and then one about 12,000 years ago. And for whatever reason, during those pinch points, and I think it might have been cultural, that was the case, that a significant number of women were reproducing, but men weren't. But almost immediately after, we went back to almost like 1-to-1, because that's our baseline. So something weird happened to us 100,000 years ago and about 12,000 years ago. And the other thing is that women's generations tend to be shorter than men's. So what I mean by is that, for example, women will have their first child at 20, men will have their first child at 25. Over time, that means in it, like for any particular century, you're going to have 5 grandmas and 4 grandpas, if you think about it. So that also has to be taken into account, and that can control for a lot of that as well. So we are pair bonders, but we also have this potential of mating in different ways. And for whatever reason, 100,000 years ago, it was like 1 man for every 10 women.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's not quite. I think it's overstated. And honestly, if it was 1 man for every 10 women, it was probably because a whole bunch of men died.
Yeah.
All right. So
All right. So I got this is the last time code. This is her talking about the future, or like what is like the future directions and consequences. So to right here, I guess.
Personality and social psychology that presenters explain how their work advances equity and anti-racism, and the evaluation of presentations based on their ability to achieve these goals. Growing concerns about coddling the free speech crisis and increasing censorship and self-censorship on college campuses. These changes reflect rising prioritization of egalitarianism, potentially at the expense of merit-based evaluations of science.
So I think when she says egalitarianism, she's being a bit she's being very charitable to
charitable.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I think that it's probably, well, egalitarianism is just another way of saying feminist. That's why when feminists are confronted, they'll say it's just about equality, bro. But yeah, what does that mean except tearing down the exceptional? So
Well, here's the thing, like, you can't have egalitarianism and merit unless you recognize that hierarchies of merit, like if everybody is competing on a relatively equal playing field, the result won't be egalitarian, because people will use whatever talents they have to get better than others, right? But you could say that the end result is within egalitarianism, because you're dealing with competing along a metric that doesn't like, it doesn't, some people may get advantages, but the academic merit is supposed to be relatively blind. Like, it's supposed to just reward you for your work, reward you for your excellence, reward you for your talents. So it's like, is the idea of equality totally incompatible with merit? Like, I don't know. I mean, because we want to achieve a playing field that is equal as possible. The problem is that how do you determine an equal playing field?
you get out of everybody's way. It's the only way. You get out of everybody's way. You let the chips fall where they may. And like if people need help, I'm not saying you don't help them, But you don't give somebody an artificial boost, because that's kind of what, or tear people down who are doing too well is actually,
Mm.
even worse. I
Yeah.
think that the best way is to just get out of their way, especially of those who are doing well. Let them do well. Don't be envious or jealous. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, like then the cream rises to the top. I think that I mean, like who actually wants to be like, oh, I think I should be like a champion tennis player. Well, okay, good for you, but like you can you play tennis? No. Okay then. Like that, like it's the same thing, right? Like when
Mhm.
well, you look at what this like quest for egalitarianism has done to our entertainment industries in the last decade or so. Like Women in Animation, a union that was basically put together with the agenda of having half of all people involved in the animation industry be women, because there was this presumption that it was sexism keeping them out of the industry, has actually made the industry worse, because there are no standards of excellence. There's no pursuit of who's the best animator, who is the best artist, who are the best writers. None of that mattered. It was just like, we need more women in there. We just need more vaginas and it'll all work out. Or like the this reminds me the firefighter video we watched the other day, right?
Mhm.
Where the woman or whoever, I don't know, I'm not honestly did I'm not sure. I'm gonna say that was a woman that said something like, "Oh, I think it's really important that people see somebody that looks like them rescuing them in a fire." And I was talking to Lindsay about this. Like, I had this idea for like a comedy sketch where you have a burning building, and there's like, a black lesbian woman that's in there, and she's like, "Oh my God, there's a fire." And the firefighters show up, and they're all wearing like their full gear, helmets and masks, and they got the hoses. It's almost like that. There's like that first person video this firefighter did, so you can see what it looks like to fight a fire, like from firsthand, right? And they fight past it all, and she's like gagging, and she's trying to like save herself. She thinks it's all over, and then the door comes down and firefighters break in, and they about to rescue her. And then another firefighter comes, breathing heavy, pushes past all of them, is really fat. It's almost something out of Family Guy, wearing a mask. Is like, get out of the way, get out of the way. And then like saves the woman, takes her outside, and then like reveals that she looks like her, takes the mask off. Look, did you expect this? And she's like, oh my God, now I know I could be a firefighter too. It's so great to be rescued by someone who looks like me. That's how absurd it is. Like that, like,
Mhm.
it's like um anyway, I don't know, like how that could be really funny if done well. It could either be like where, she reveals it and everybody's like really impressed, and she gets the key to the city and everything. It's just really over the top absurd. Or,
Mhm.
like she's telling her, I'm a lesbian of color like you, but she doesn't take her mask off, and the other, I guess I'll have to take your word for it, right? So
Sorry,
I don't
my
know.
cat has is extreme. I think she's decided that the computer is harming me somehow.
Yeah.
So she's trying to get between us, so that because I got pretty feisty, and she was like, no, no, that's not acceptable. You can't do that. You got to be calm, because otherwise I think that this thing that you're talking to is harming you somehow, and I want to get rid of it. So she's being a bit of a pest.
Hmm.
Um, all right. So is this the last bit? No, I thought
Yeah.
that was pretty funny. You know, they should do that. Like
I think
Babylon
somebody
Bee.
should do that. They should do like, this is what comedy could be. They could
Mhm.
totally be,
That guy
like,
who
don't you realize you were just rescued by a lesbian of color? Don't you see and then oh yeah, you know what? That could be me one day. I mean, that's what that representation thing, that's how absolutely ridiculous it is. But
Mm.
anyway, I think that's basically it. I mean, I could play some more of this. There isn't a lot more. It's just like,
Unless you want to continue with the cat
Be designed to
ASMR.
minimize
no, it's
potential harms and psychological distress, potentially at the expense of academic freedom. Both
Potentially at the
priorities
expense.
are consistent with women's evolved psychological preferences for egalitarianism and harm avoidance, and the stated higher prioritization of social justice and emotional well being.
Yeah. So then basically, this is like she's basically saying this is where we are now, and I don't know what we can do about it. I mean, I think that like essentially the male perspective has to be integrated.
Mhm.
If men care, if we're gonna care about truth, we have to like make that a priority. And it looks like men generally care more about truth or whatever the facts are, and operating off of that. You can't do the right thing if you don't know. Like it's like you cannot solve a problem if you don't have all of the variables. One of the first variables is what is the situation for men, and no one wants to look at it, or at least very few people do. What's funny is that Alex Syke is an Evo Psych guy. How come he's not talking about this stuff? Oh, I know, because that doesn't get his paycheck signed. So
Oh my goodness. Sorry if that wasn't too
yeah.
loud. Okay.
Oh, it's all right.
I'm gonna either have to put Mia in the other room, or we're gonna have to.
Oh, we're
to,
done. We can
all
we
right,
can
all
wrap
right,
it up
then.
here. Yeah.
Okay, you did use the D word. All right, so let me try to wrap this up while under attack by my cat. She's just trying to love me to death. Okay. So, if you enjoy this content, you want to make sure that we're able to continue to talk about this. Like, people invest in gold, they invest in the dollar, they invest in I don't know, the energy sector. I'm investing in men. I think that's where our investments should go. So yeah, if you want to hear that, more of that kind of content, please go to feedthebadger.com/support and help us out. And if you just want to support us, give us a tip and send us a message, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And yeah, I guess Mia
Great Indoor is
made her
that
presence known.
Great Indoor is asking us to play the last minute and a half.
Okay.
He
I'm gonna
insists on it.
I'm gonna go
So
put
the
Mia in the
last
other room
from
then.
2021 onward. Okay, fine. This better really upset us. So it's like this last section. Okay.
On the political left, with which academia is increasingly dominated. In data, female sex continues to predict lower support for academic freedom and lower prioritization of truth after controlling for political allegiance. Nevertheless, these changes may be co-occurring to create positive feedback loops. To wit, desire for social equity encourages women to pursue academia. A changing sex composition affects ideological tilt and intellectual priorities of academia, and these new priorities further attract women and others with left-wing political priorities. But regardless of whether the equity or the estrogen came first, the growing percentage of women is likely to continue to influence their priorities of science and higher education. The point here is not to lament or celebrate these changes, but simply to identify and try to understand them, and to know that they will lead to predictable downstream consequences. Institutions are not independent of the people who populate them, and altering the characteristics of those people will inevitably change them. Those that believe that the purpose, the lodestar of science, should be the pursuit of truth might find these trends worrisome. But it would be unethical and futile to attempt to roll back the enormous social gains women have made. The men's club era of academia is over. A new and more female-oriented era is here for the foreseeable future. This essay was written by the behavioral scientist.
So okay, yeah. Well, I don't think. See, this is the thing that where the Quillette centrism comes in. There's always this like, well, we don't want to roll things back to the old boys club. Like that's not going to happen. Why are you fretting about that? Like this is like the whole like ma backlash, ma patriarchal backlash, ma androcentric culture, must Project 2025. That's not going to happen. Stop freaking out. But you can't ignore this. You can't pretend like this isn't going to have like negative consequences. You don't realize that like what the potential of this is going to be. I mean, there are women right now on TikTok and other social media sites that have bachelor's and master's degrees, and they have like, mid-level paying jobs, and they're single because they don't think any men are good enough for them, and they don't know why men aren't stepping up, even though they have been granted every possible opportunity and advantage to put themselves in the position they are in, and they are not even aware of it. And so they're like, well, where are the men that are at my level or above? They're not, they don't, oh, it must be them. It's like the Hannah Cox, like, oh, you're just losers. You need to step up. No, bitch, you got a bunch of advantages. Like there are literal like programs to give women a leg up. Do you not know that? So there are going to be effects. Nobody's saying that we're going to take away women's rights or anything like
Well,
that.
let me just be clear. The effect is that we are going to lose our society. Like the effect is that this is the peak of scientific knowledge. The effect is that now we have basically have this pie. The pie's not going to get any bigger. That means there's going to be no new discoveries. I actually recently read an article that went through and analyzed scientific discoveries no longer happen now. That's it. We're at the peak. Now it's about cutting up the pie. And when the pie is gone, it's all going to dissolve into nothing, right? That's our future if we don't address this. Now I'm gonna go a little bit further than Quillette. And maybe people won't realize it until it's on the horizon. But this is a destructive impulse. What we're seeing in academia is its destruction. Now, it's going to get worse. It's going to get sucked into that black hole I was talking about before. And the funny thing is that none of this is making women happy. None of it. But it's going to continue to happen. And it's going to continue to have been precipitated by a lie, which is feminism. Right? All of this idea that, oh, we can't return to the old boys club. Oh, this is an improvement on what we have to embrace the destruction of our society. We have to, because otherwise we'd be returning to something immoral. All of that is based on a lie. All of the moral justification for this, for the destruction of academia, for the destruction of all the other institutions, to bring people in who are going to destroy it by definition because they're not in there to actually pursue the goals of the organization. I mean, there's nothing more clear than this. We bring women into academia. They aren't pursuing the goals of academia. They aren't pursuing truth. They aren't pursuing intellectual rigor. They aren't pursuing freedom of expression. They're pursuing dividing it all up emotionally to make them feel good, right? You're bringing in a whole bunch of people who aren't going to pursue the goals of academia. They aren't going to pursue the goals of the organizations they're part of. What do you think is going to happen to those institutions when you have a whole bunch of critical mass of people that have no interest in pursuing the goals of those institutions? They're going to fall apart. Guaranteed. There's no logical other outcome. And yet we pursue this. We pursue this devil's path because we've convinced ourselves it's morally right. And yet the entire argument of whether or not it's morally right is based on a lie. We are going to fuck ourselves based on a lie about reality. Okay. We have chosen the form of our destructor. Destructor.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So once again, if you guys listening enjoy this content, you could support it at feedthebadger.com/support. If you want to send us a message with that support, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. I'm going to hand it back to Brian if he has any final thoughts, because I got to go deal with
we're
a
good.
cat.
The only thing I will say is that on Sunday, we are having a meetup in Roanoke. I'm going to be there. Lindsay's going to be there. Mike, Dr. Randbergham's going to be there. Lauren's going to be there. And Hannah is going to be there. And we're going to be meeting up at Five Guys Burgers and Fries because it seems appropriate in Roanoke, Virginia at the Tanglewood Mall in the afternoon, say like 2 or 3. If you want to meet up there. And we're going to be going to the inauguration on the following day in Washington, D.C., where we don't have tickets to that. So we're going to be like out on the outskirts, but we'll be around. And if you want to like get more details, just go into the Discord server at badgernation.online if you're interested. If you're going to be in the area of Southwest Virginia on Sunday and you want to like meet us and talk to us in person. Or if you're going to go to the inauguration on Monday. So please consider either of those, and hopefully we'll see you guys there. come into the Discord server, badgernation.online, Roanoke, Virginia, Sunday afternoon. Tomorrow's Saturday. Sunday afternoon at Five Guys Burgers and Fries in the Tanglewood Mall. All right. Anyway, so if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications.
Wait.
What?
Okay, I have to do a shout out. Thank you to the Great Indoors for putting in $500 to feedthebadger.com/support, which is completely unrelated to the topic of this show.
All right.
Thank you. Come again.
Thank you. All right.
All right. So if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys think about what we talked about on the video. You can find a link to the article as well as the video that we responded to in the description. So if you want to see it for yourself, and please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame, and we will talk to you guys in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.